So it's budget press conference, always complicated. So I just ask for your patience as we go through some of the details. But today we're announcing a couple of positive developments with our budget. In overall picture, the city has a fiscal year budget that starts July 1st and goes through June 30th. And so the press conference today is about our fiscal year 2021-22 budget, which closed on June 30th of this year. And once the budget closes, Mr. Gormany and his office work to close out the accounts, work with our actuaries to make sure that the information is accurate, and it takes some time. And so as they've been working through that, we've had a better understanding of overall what the closeout looks like. And today we're focusing on two different announcements. One is a budget surplus that we had from last year's budget of $16.9 million. And the second is about a positive development from one of the rating agencies, Fitch, that moved our credit rating from BBB to BBB positive. Overall, it's really good news for the city. It underscores that we're going in the right direction. And I'm going to go through some details about what all this means, why we ended up with the surplus, and also talk about big picture. I want to start by reminding people about how we started this past budget that we just closed. When I initially presented this budget in March of 2021, you'll recall that the city was facing over a $60 million deficit between revenues and expenses. And because of the extreme financial challenges that we were facing at the time, many of which we continue to face, we were forced with a choice to dramatically increase taxes and do massive cuts, or get assistance from our partners, the state and Yale University. So at that time I submitted two budgets. One included a 7.75% tax increase and massive cuts. The other included an assumption that we would get significant additional funding from the state and Yale University. Board of Alders approved the second budget, anticipating that we would get a significant increase in that funding. And as you all know, through the development and work that our state delegation did at the state level, and a lot of advocacy, and then also through a lot of local advocacy and dialogue and conversation with Yale University, we saw a significant increase in both entities' contribution to the city. The state increased its pilot funding by approximately $50 million. Yale increased its annual payment to the city from $13 to $23 million. And so that was a significant help with us being able to address our most immediate challenges. In addition to that assistance with us landing on the surplus, and keep in mind that the Alders approved the budget with the $53 million assumed increase. Combined with the state and Yale payments, we actually got more than that, approximately $7 million more than that from those two entities. So that was one help on reaching this $16.9 million surplus. Other contributing factors were salaries were $3.5 million under budget. New Haven and cities around the nation, and a lot of private sector entities as well, are really struggling with staffing issues right now. We have over 200 vacancies. And while that puts a lot of pressure on all of our staff across many departments, it did lead to some financial savings this year of salaries to the tune of $3.5 million. There was additional tax revenue that came in through property motor vehicle taxes and of around $7 million. A large chunk of that was people actually paying their back taxes, which is really good news, that people were making sure that they were able to pay their back taxes, both to bring their accounts up to date, but also to acknowledge that those people that do pay their taxes, make sure that everyone does pay their taxes in the end. Real estate conveyance tax was over budget by 1.3. million, $1.36 million. Building inspection and permit revenue was over by $1.6 million. And this is a testament to the work that has been done by Jim Tersu and his department. And I think like many individuals that are living and visiting New Haven see a testament to the strong economic development efforts of the city and the growth that we're experiencing as a city right now. We anticipate that growth to continue moving forward. We also had around $2.3 million of savings in our debt service line item. It's very important to our team to not refinance in an irresponsible way, meaning to refinance our debt and pass along those significant payments into the future. But because interest rates were low at the time that we did some refinancing, we were able to do that in a responsible way without pushing out the term of those loans. And then of course I mentioned the state aid and Young University payments. A couple other budget notes. It was really, really important the Board of Ed came in basically on budget. And I want to thank the people that are working for New Haven Public Schools for their work in a very, very challenging year to reach budget. As Mr. Gormley, I'm sure will share, at the beginning of this fiscal year, we started to see a trend in the wrong direction with a lot of additional expenses and some concerns about our ability to reach budget. And I know that on the Board of Ed side, they had a significant deficit for quite some time throughout the year, but they were able to rein that spending in and came in on budget, which is fantastic. While parking meter receipts were slightly up, parking tag revenue was significantly down. I think that's something that we've seen in a lot of cities around the nation because of COVID, not as many people coming. Initially, we're starting to see that change, but into cities to park. New Haven Parking Authority revenue was down as well. And there was a very significant increase in the cost of healthcare. Again, our assessment of this is that employees that were refraining from seeking certain medical care during the height of COVID, this past year started to seek that medical care, and that's why that number went up pretty significantly by $8.6 million from what the budget was. While this is really good news, we have a lot more work to do. And I wanted to underscore that this is part of an overall strategy for us to address systemic and historical budget challenges of underfunding our pensions, over-borrowing, and not having enough revenue to be able to continue to deliver the services that New Haven residents deserve. And our strategy has been to budget in a way that is more responsible. We've increased our annual payments to our pension funds to slowly chip away at the unfunded liability. We've decreased our investment rate of return from 7.75 to 7.25 for our pension funds. And that is a more conservative estimate of what those investments are likely to accrue over the years, and so that's much more responsible. We've capped the amount that we issue in debt every year to $30 million, which is lower than we've seen in many years in the city, so that we can slowly bring the amount of debt service that we owe down and within more reason. And of course, we've advocated to increase our revenue from the state and Young University. And the final thing that I think is a key component to addressing these budget challenges is growth. And we continue to see through all the ribbon cuttings that we have, the cranes in the sky, a significant investment in New Haven that brings tax revenue to our city that is crucial to help us address our budget problems. But we have a long way to go. The city's pensions are still underfunded by $866 million. The city's OPEB liabilities, which are primarily retirement healthcare liabilities, are underfunded by $829 million. And we have outstanding debt bonds to the tune of $625 million. So while we have made a lot of progress, and the surplus is a testament to the work that Mr. Gorman and his team have done, and city staff at being really cautious about their expenses. In the big picture, our city is still very much struggling and will have a tough road ahead. But the progress, not just with the surplus, but with Fitch acknowledging we're in a much better place than we were last year, is really significant. And I think we come a long way. One other thing about the surplus, because I think a question will come up of what are you going to do with this additional money. So our current fund balance, rainy day fund, is $20 million. So this 16.9 will be added to that $20 million to reach $36.9 million in our fund balance. And that's good news. It gives us a buffer as we head into what is likely to be a recession and more challenging times. And the best practices outlined by the Government Finance Officers Association, GFOA, is that a fund balance should have in it approximately 2 months of operating expenses, or approximately 18% of our operating budget, which is over $100 million. And so we need to make sure that we're thoughtful and cautious about our future expenses. And it's very important that we continue to build up our fund balance so that when we do face more challenging financial times in the future, we have that buffer to get through these times. Come a long way, but we still face a lot of challenges. I did want to thank Mr. Gormany and the Budget Office for an incredible job done, the state delegation, and of course, so many members of the community, the Board of Alders, for helping advocate for the increased revenue we're seeing and ensuring that we're really thoughtful and cautious about how we spend money in the city. Mr. Gormany, what did I miss?
Good afternoon, everyone. I will be brief. I think the mayor covered a lot of the points. First, of course, I'd like to thank the mayor for his leadership throughout this budget season in preparing the budget, all the challenges that the city faced during fiscal year 21-22. I'd also like to thank my staff, Office of Management and Budget, the Department of Finance, who worked very hard and diligently during the fiscal year, and just our city coordinators, department heads, and all the other staff that work behind the scenes. I think there's a lot that goes into these operating results that the mayor mentioned, of having a surplus of $16.9 million for fiscal year 22. Forecasting where the city's gonna end a fiscal year is both an art and a science. There's really no exact methodology on how we're going to end a fiscal year, especially once the fiscal year is beginning. There's one thing that can throw off all your projections, whether it's in the beginning, middle, or end of the fiscal year. As the mayor mentioned, in the beginning of the fiscal year, we were projecting revenues less than budget, and we were projecting expenditures to actually exceed budget. During the monthly reports, we reached a high of $15 million as the city's projected deficit, which included $5 million from the Board of Ed. The city really seen a strong second half during fiscal year 21-22. We really seen strong tax collections, building permits, which again is a testament to the economic development going on in New Haven. Meter receipts, as the mayor mentioned, of course the additional state aid that we lobbied for in the negotiations with Yale. And then also, we really worked with city department heads and coordinators on our expenditures, maximizing the savings based on the deficit that we were seeing. So again, the city really had a strong half of this second half of the fiscal year, which contributed to these savings. And again, I'd like to thank everyone for working with my staff. I know it's not easy as we're looking at expenditures and trying to collect revenues, and also on the Board of Education side as well. So again, the results were really $16.9 million as the surplus. Again, contributing to the fund balance, moving that up to over $36 million is certainly a good thing for the, for the city. The positive fiscal year 21-22 results were due to the last few years of just different fiscal policies and fiscal strategies that the city has implemented. The mayor outlined some of them, you know, regarding pension. We're gonna be taking a look at a lot of the areas that the mayor mentioned in future budget cycles as well. You know, the goal is to continue to build on the fund balance and the surplus that we had in this fiscal year, making sure we maintain an adequate budget and sustainable budget in future years as well. As the mayor mentioned, we still have a lot of work to go, a long way to go, a lot of work to do, sorry. But I think this result shows that we have been on the right path going forward for the city. And I think Fitch, by upgrading the city from BBB to BBB plus positive, shows that the city is going in the right direction as well. So, thank you.
Any questions for folks?
I was just wondering, you had mentioned in last March about pandemic impact, doing a lot of damage. Did that end up not coming about, or did we make up for it in the second half? How did the pandemic impact this fiscal year?
Yeah, I think as we're developing the budget for fiscal year 21-22, being in the pandemic certainly did have an impact on how we were budgeting revenues and expenses. We really wanted to take a conservative approach, and I think we've seen some of the remnants of the pandemic during the first half of the 21-22 budget cycle. But again, as the pandemic started to ease, I think that's where we've seen this strong second half in fiscal year 21-22. As the mayor mentioned, we certainly did see some over expenditures such as medical, because I think individuals were, you know, going to the doctors more, getting out more, doing getting medical care. So I think we really looked at expenditures like that. But I think the pandemic kind of impacted how we budgeted 21-22, and obviously, you know, that kind of impacts how we move forward as well.
I mean, I could add to that, just looking at the items that we mentioned, the pandemic impacted staffing challenges around the nation in a way that I think was quite unexpected, but everyone is experiencing this right now, where it's very, very difficult to find staffing. Real estate conveyance tax is about real estate transactions, and we've seen, particularly during the heart of the pandemic, all kinds of real estate transactions going on across the nation, and so that actually increased our budget some. But then on the flip side, parking tags were pretty significantly down. That's another impact of the pandemic, the healthcare, as Michael mentioned. So a lot of moving parts here, some that actually ended up being slightly revenue positive, and some others that were increases in expenses.
But for the last 2 years, when's the last time the city had a budget surplus?
I want to say approximately 3 years ago, three to 4 years ago. I don't have the exact year in front of me, but it's been about 3 or 4 years.
And you mentioned that the tax base is increasing. Do you have any numbers on that? How has the tax base grown due to increased valuation, or just more property being built, in a sense?
Well, I think that is based on our grand list. As you know, we went into a revaluation cycle during the 21-22 budget cycle, as the mayor had mentioned. You know, the grand list grew by about $2.2 billion. So I think that's a testament to what we're seeing in New Haven and just around the country as far as real estate values and personal property and motor vehicle values. So we did definitely see grand list growth during that period, during the pandemic, and you know, we'll see where that takes us.
And what does the Fitch rating upgrade really mean for the city?
So equate the three rating agencies to almost like your personal credit score. The higher the score, the better interest rates you get when you borrow funding. So as you know, as the mayor mentioned, we do capital borrowing every 2 years. So what the Fitch rating would help is to make sure that we get lower interest rates on the funding that we borrow. And just any overall debt instrument. So they look at these ratings again, almost like your personal credit score. The higher your score, the better interest or loans or amount that you can borrow. So it's certainly a positive for New Haven that Fitch recognized the fiscal policies that we put in place and that we're on the right track.
I would add to that, so in addition to making it slightly less costly for us to issue debt, it also is an outside party that has no skin in the game here, that is validating that we're going in the right direction. And I think that that's a very important thing, because it's one thing for us to say we're going in the right direction, but it's another thing for an entity that is really getting into the details of our budget. They submit a lot of questions to our budget office, and really spend a lot of time analyzing our budget to come up with the rating, because that rating is about their own integrity, and so it's very important for them to get the right rating, and it's a validation that we're headed in the right direction.
Mayor, nearly $17 million budget surplus, what does it mean for residents? And when they hear that, well, the city's got a surplus, break it down for them.
So the big picture is, it is good news for the health of our city, and residents rely on city services from everything from support for individuals experiencing homelessness, to getting your sidewalk fixed, to ensuring that we have enough funding to support our public safety initiatives in the city. And us having a increasingly healthy financial situation means that residents in the long term can have more certainty that they're going to be able to rely on the city for that support. It also means that we'll be able to continue to keep taxes at a somewhat reasonable level, which I think is very important to residents. And at this time, what's also very important for residents to know is that through American Rescue Plan funding, we're rolling out all kinds of additional supports to residents. Just yesterday, we talked about the I'm Home initiative, that is rental support and down payment assistance support for people, residents, New Haven residents that are income eligible, that are interested in buying a new home. And there's going to be a lot of other initiatives that we're going to be rolling out. So overall, while the city still faces financial problems, we're going in the right direction, and the residents are going to see a lot of benefit to, I think, the team's work in being thoughtful about how we manage things financially, but also really prioritizing funding through American Rescue Plan funding going directly to residents in the city.
Just so Yale this week reported a drop in its endowment for the first time in a while. Do you have any concern of its ability to continue making higher pilot payments going forward, or do you have that in writing?
I don't have any concern that Yale's going to follow through with their commitment to us, and they've made that very, very clear, both publicly and privately. And I have no concern that they're going to follow through with that commitment. Great, thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you.